I'll just wait for Mr. Cheers to let me know when we're ready. Okay, so thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for parents at home who are watching the live stream. We're going to today have a bit of a chat about the QCE system, the ATAR system, and importantly, the subject selections for the next few years. I've got some curriculum booklets and subject selection forms at the front, so you can come and grab them at any time that you can do so. A little bit of housekeeping. So tonight we'll have the male toilets directly downstairs in the McKeag Drama, just outside the drama room. Female toilets, we just head out the door and to the left, the opposite building, the Luck House, will be where we have our female toilets. So what are we going to be looking at this evening? As I said, we're going to have a look at the QCE system, the ATAR calculations and system. Importantly, the actual curriculum that you are able to undertake whilst at Girls Grammar in Year 11 and 12 in the next 2 years. How you go about actually choosing what it is that you want to take. And importantly, talk to our lovely staff representatives and CQ University representatives. And we'll also have someone here to talk about school-based traineeships and apprenticeships for those people that are interested in those areas. I'd just like to invite Michelle Googe to come forward, our principal, to say a few words of welcome. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for spending some time today to come and talk to your teachers and our staff about subject selection for next year. There's probably never been a more important opportunity to be thinking about what you want to be studying in your senior subjects. And tonight I invite you to make sure you engage with all of the teachers, find out what the requirements are for that subject. And I also want you to think about where your passion lies, because ultimately at the end of the day, you need to be doing what you love. And when you're doing what you love, you do well. So thank you very much, teachers, for coming tonight. I know it's not a very large crowd, but it's a good opportunity to really, you guys are going to be so lucky because you're going to get a really good overview of your subjects today. So enjoy your evening. Thank you so much, and good luck for your senior subjects.
Right, so we're going to have a bit of a look at some of the important organisations to do with schooling in Queensland, in particular in the senior schooling years, which is QCAA and QTAC. So we're going to start with QCAA, which is the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority. They're actually responsible for all the certification that students will get at the end of Year 12. The most important piece of certification is probably the QCE or Queensland Certificate of Education. But they're also responsible for developing all of the syllabuses for the subjects across Year 11 and 12, in fact from prep through to 12, but in this context, all of the senior subjects. For the QCE, essentially that is the verified evidence of the learning that you've undertaken at school, so it will tell you what you have done and the level to which you have achieved at it. It's not officially the school qualification, because you do actually have a period of around about 7 years to accrue the qualification after school, if you haven't done so by the time you do finish school. But essentially it is the qualification that people take to be the Year 12 graduation certificate, replacing the old senior certificate from my years. So we want 100% of our students, when they graduate from Year 12, to qualify and receive the QCE. So there's a few things you need to do in order to do that. The first thing is to actually accrue 20 credits. So you can accrue those credits from your QCAA general and applied subjects, from VETIS qualification, so that can be a Cert 2 or higher. Cert 1 qualification won't give any credit towards your QCE. And importantly, it's really got to be very clear that there is a difference between QCE and ATAR in terms of the level of cert that the qualification will be accepted at. For an ATAR, it'll actually be a Certificate 3 or higher required. There are other options that you can accrue points from. So, for example, university courses such as Sun courses will allow you to accrue 2 points, in fact, for each university subject that you do. And there are a lot of other ways as well. There are recognised studies, so some people get some points from doing AMEB level 4, grade 4 and above. The other thing that you need to do with those credits is make sure that at least 12 of them come from a core area. So those core areas can come from your QCAA subjects. Essentially, you need to have you will receive 4 credits for each subject that you successfully get through. being Unit 1, Unit 2 and Unit 3, 4. If you do a Cert 2 qualification, you accrue up to 4 points towards your core studies. Cert 3 and 4, you can accrue up to 8. And for a school-based apprenticeship, you can accrue up to 6. The school-based apprenticeships are a lower number of points than potentially a traineeship at a Cert 3 level, purely because you won't be finished the apprenticeship by the time you leave Year 12. The last thing you need to do is receive literacy and numeracy passes. Again, a number of ways you can do that. For our students, we would like every student to achieve in a mathematics and an English subject satisfactory in either Unit 1, well actually we'd like in all units, but a minimum for literacy and numeracy of Unit 1, Unit 2, or a C in Unit 3 and 4. So just by doing your maths and English subjects and passing them, you'll get your literacy and numeracy requirements. The other organisation that we want to have a quick chat about is the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre. They've had a bit of a role change over these last few years and have been transitioning towards their new role, which will actually commence next year. And that is primarily with the calculation of the ATAR. So that's the body that will be actually doing that starting in 2020. The other thing that they do and have always done is administer the tertiary entrance process for the universities. It's actually a private company owned by 8 of the universities. It's a not-for-profit company and it fulfills that purpose. So again, ATAR is an area that is changing. So our current Year 11 cohort is our first group that will be qualifying for an ATAR. So what is it? Well, it's the Australian Tertiary Admission Rank. It now brings Queensland into line with the rest of the Australian states and territories. So this will be the last year that our grade 12 graduates will be receiving an OP rather than an ATAR. Really important to know though that its sole purpose is to gain entry to university courses that require a certain level. It is not used to determine your worth. In fact, if you are not intending on going to university, you don't even need to qualify for an ATAR. How it works, essentially it's a percentile ranking, and so the highest ATAR will be a 99.95 and it'll actually go all the way down to a 0. The main difference between ATAR and OP is actually the fine scale nature of it. So in the ATAR there's actually going to be 2,000 point scale that you can achieve on, whereas the OP is a 25-point scale. So it allows for a lot more differentiation for the unis, particularly for those really hard to get into competitive courses. If you are at the lower end of ATARs, so if you achieve an ATAR under 30, then you will get represented as having achieved 30 or less. So it's important to know. So in terms of qualifying for an ATAR, again, if you are intending to go to university, for most cases you would want an ATAR, but it's not the only option. We'll have a talk about that in a moment. But essentially you're going to need a minimum of 4 general subjects. So the general subjects for girls' grammar are the vast majority of the subjects we offer. In the curriculum guides, each subject is labelled as being general or applied. So a minimum of 4 general subjects. The 5th option can be another general subject. It can be an applied subject, or it can actually be a cert qualification at Cert 3 or higher. So again, just reiterating, in an ATAR it needs to be Cert 3 or higher, but for the QCE it can be a Cert 2 or higher. Just a couple of subject combinations that you've got to be careful of if you wish to be eligible for an ATAR, and again, part of the process of the subject selections will be me going through and making sure that if anyone is not eligible for an ATAR that they are definitely aware that they are not. But you can't include both a general and an applied mathematics or English subject into your ATAR. It will be fine for QCE, you can choose those subjects, but you can only have one of them contribute towards an ATAR. So the example is, you can do English and you can do applied English, however, only one of those will contribute to an ATAR. Same with maths. General subjects, fine. So the example here, if you do mathematical methods, which is like the old Maths B, and specialist mathematics, which is like the old Maths C, they are both general subjects and both can apply to the ATAR without any problem. Same with English and English and Literature extension. English is probably the most important subject to take note of in terms of ATAR, and there are some specific rules about that. It is the only subject that you must achieve a pass in order to qualify for your ATAR. So when I'm talking about a pass, I'm talking about units 3 and 4. So in our new system, we're not working on semester 1, semester 2, semester 3 and semester 4. We're instead working on Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3 and Unit 4. The only information that goes to QTAC to calculate your ATAR is Unit 3 and 4 work. They don't get to see what happens in Unit 1 and 2. They don't care what happens in Unit 1 and 2, Unit 3 and 4 only. So to get the ATAR, a C or better in English. Importantly, if you are a student who is a math science person and not an English person, you can choose your math science subjects and your English. If your English is your lowest ranking subject because it's not your strength, that is okay. Your ATAR will be calculated on the 5 best subjects. English does not have to be in that best 5. Different states do that differently. Some will include English, some will not, but in Queensland it's going to be the case that you do not have to have English included in your calculation. The only thing you've got to be very careful of if you are looking at going to university is to make sure that you have a look at the prerequisites for the Year 10 guide. So I've got a couple of copies of these which I'll leave at the front at the end of the presentation, but they're also, the girls have seen them on the website for QTAC. You'll find that the vast majority, not all, but vast majority of courses will require English as the general subject rather than the applied English as the prerequisite to get into those courses. So if you're really keen on going to university, you need to make sure that the course that you are trying to get into requires the English that you're going to be choosing. Okay, so again, in terms of ATAR, one of the things that people ask a lot is about scaling and subject scaling. And what is it and does it happen? Well, essentially, yes, it does happen. So what will happen with scaling of subjects is that a student will get a raw score that might, for example, be 68 out of 100, and depending upon student results in those subjects, they will make a determination of how difficult those subjects were. So they're going to do a statistical process to determine that. What they're then going to do is, perhaps if they found that that subject was an easier subject, then what might happen is they might scale that score down from a 68 maybe to a 65. If it was a difficult subject, then they might scale that up instead of a 68 up to a 70, 71, whatever it happens to be. The reason being is that they're trying to get equality of effort and achievement across the subjects. Otherwise, you could do what you find to be, and most people find to be, potentially easy subjects and outperform students who choose the traditional hard subjects, which would be deemed to be unfair. So that's the process behind it. Important to note that there is no information about how subjects will scale. It'll be done for each cohort individually, and it'll be published, of course, after all the results are in. Over a few years, however, we will get a picture about how the subjects will scale. I would suggest that whilst we don't know what the subject scaling will be, it won't probably be radically different to what currently happens in the OP system. So I can provide some advice about that if required. So an example of how that subject scaling might work in an ideal situation, we have a student who's studying mathematical methods and who scores 65 out of 100 at the conclusion of year 12. However, if she had done general mathematics, which the vast majority of people find to be an easier subject, she may well have scored 75 out of 100 because it was easier. Okay? So in the process of scaling, what would have happened is that the maths method score would then be scaled up to 70, and the general maths might have actually scaled down to 70. So what ends up happening, regardless of the subject that that student has chosen, they've ended up with the same score because across those subjects they have the same academic ability overall. So that's the point behind the scaling, and that is the idea of trying to even out the playing field and getting rewarded for doing more academically challenging subjects. In terms of cert courses, as I said, for general and applied subjects, for ATAR eligibility, you can do 4 general and another general, 4 general and applied, or you can do 4 general and a certificate course. So that certificate course will also scale. So again, we don't know what the level of scaling will be for certificate courses. However, what we do know is that all Cert 3 courses, regardless of the content involved, will scale the same. All Cert 4 courses will scale the same. And of course, a Cert 4 course would scale higher than a Cert 3 course. What I would suggest is, based upon the advice of QTAC, that if you are looking to get into a competitive university course that requires a very, very high ATAR, that it would be unlikely that with a certificate course that you would gain that required very, very high ATAR. The suggestion is that it might be scaling similar to around about a C level for a Cert 3, about a C level in English, but that is yet to be confirmed. You can also use those certificate qualifications for university entrance without using an ATAR. So if you do not have an ATAR and you don't qualify for an ATAR, you can still qualify. It'll be for less courses, however. Okay. Generally, you're going to require a certificate 4 level as the minimum requirement to gain entry from school or even out of school into a university course. And there is no set rule. Each individual university is setting their own schedules and their own rules about what the requirements are. So you're going to need to do some research, and again, I can help with that process. Now we're going to have a bit of a look at the curriculum that we're going to be offering over the next 2 years for you. So what we'll be offering are those potentially 7 items, or you can be choosing from those 7 items. So the general and applied subjects will be the majority of students' curriculum as it is every year. However, we are introducing some VETIS courses in conjunction with CQ University. So we'll be offering a Cert 2 in Tourism and a Cert 2 in Health Support Services. Importantly, those are 18-month courses, so that you'll be starting them at the start of year 11, but you'll be finishing them before you get to the difficulty of the timing of external exams. So the certificate courses will be out of the way before you've got to sit through the external exams. You can also take other VET courses from other providers or other VET courses from Central Queensland University, as long as they're open to school students, so VETIS courses, VET in schools. There's the option of taking on school-based traineeships or school-based apprenticeships, and again, I highly recommend those if that is the type of career that you wish to pursue. You can undertake university studies while you're at school, and we have a number of students who are doing that currently. There are also those other QCAA recognised studies, which are done external to school, but you will get credit for as part of your QCE. So again, using the example of AME-B Music, if you're studying at grade 4 or above, you will receive credit for that, and it will appear on your QCE and your certification that you get from QCAA. So let's look at each of those in a little bit more depth. For our general and applied subjects, general subjects, we are starting with 20 options to choose from. For general extension subjects, we have 2 options, and they are Unit 3-4 subjects only. By the nature of an extension subject, it builds upon other subjects that you have already done. So we have an English-based extension subject and a music-based extension subject. We have our applied subjects and those inbuilt VETIS courses for next year. Now we can see that there are actually 27 different options. So we might be spreading ourselves a little bit thin there, but my idea is that I want to see what you want to do. We need to make sure that we are, of course, viable. So if we have very small enrolments, then you just need to be aware that not all subjects might go ahead. So we just need to be very aware of that up front. In terms of those general and applied subjects, there are a couple of considerations to be very aware of. The first thing is that these subjects are designed to be developmental. So it's going to be very difficult to try and do subject changes once you have started. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it is going to be difficult. The reason why it's difficult is because if you try and move into a subject after Unit 1 is complete, there'll be an expectation that you know what has happened in Unit 1. So that means that you'll have to go back and cover all of the work that you've missed in Unit 1. If you have done Unit 1 and 2 and you try and change it Unit 3 and 4, then again, the problem will be compounded. So what we're trying to do is really get the choices correct up front now, so we don't make those changes down the track. Really important that the study load in grade 11 and 12 is significant, and so commitments are primarily school-based for year 11 and 12. Okay, you do need to maintain a balance, but what you don't want to do is load yourself up with external commitments that you don't need to. Really important. In the guide, each of the subjects has a suggested minimum entry level. Again, that's there as a guide to the sort of academic level that you should be experiencing now in order to be able to find success in those subjects. So if you are wanting to do a subject and you are not currently meeting those minimum requirements or the suggested minimum requirements, then it will mean a conversation with me so we can work out actually is it the best choice for you or not. Or get your results to there by the end of year 10 so that you can prove to yourself that you actually can achieve to the level required. There is mandated assessment in this new system. In Unit 1 and 2, not so, or far less so, but in Unit 3 and 4, there is mandated assessment, and it depends upon the type of subject. So for a general subject, each subject will have 3 internal assessments, and there will be 1 external assessment written by QCAA, which will be that external exam. For our applied subjects, there will be the same number of assessments, but all will be internal, and by internal I mean assessments that are written by the teachers, and in fact written by the teachers but approved by QCAA before they go out. In fact, we have that process happening for our assessments next year right now. If you are doing essential English or essential mathematics, then it's a little bit different. You will do 3 internals, but that 4th one will be what they call a common internal assessment. That's an assessment that will be written by QCAA, but it will be marked by your teachers at school, whereas the external assessments will be written and marked by QCAA. If you do the VETIS subjects, then you are marked upon your competency. So essentially, you reach competent, you'll get a competent grade. And then once you get through all the competencies, then you'll be awarded the Cert Qual. For that external assessment, again, this is something to do with how subjects will scale potentially in terms of academic requirement. So when we look at the science and mathematics subjects, in terms of the external assessment, they are definitely the most challenging. They are 50% of your grade, and they are based upon Unit 3 and 4. Okay, so that means basically your external exam for all maths and science subjects at the end of Year 12 will be on a year's worth of work, and it will be half of your overall grade. For the arts subjects, again, it will be Unit 3 and 4, so it will be based upon an entire year's of work. However, it'll only be a 25% weighting. All other subjects will be Unit 4 only, and it will be 25% weighting. What will be important, though, is that by the time you get to your external exams, you will know the marks that you've banked so far. So when the teachers assign a grade, that will be an interim grade. Those grades then have to go off to QCAA for approval, and that approval will come back before you sit your external exam, so you're going to know where you're sitting before you get to that point. To that, you can see that there is a bit more high stakes around those external exams, so we are going to be holding mock exams for our Year 12s, and they're going to be done at the conclusion of Unit 4, which will be at the end of Term 3. So to facilitate that, we are going to be moving a week of our holidays from the June-July period to the September-October period. So that means we are going to have 2 weeks in our mid-year, and we'll have 3 weeks in our 3/4 of the way through the year. The reason being is we're going to ask our Year 12 students to stay behind in that first week so that they can undertake mock exams in order for the teachers then to be able to mark them, turn them around and get the feedback to the students in time to then do preparation for the next few weeks before the external exams occur. So we need to have a bit of a look at the timeline of how things are going to be structured for this cohort. So in 2020, we're still going to be, in terms of the physical structure of terms, still existing. But as I said, we are moving to Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, and so they're not going to fit nice and neatly like they currently do into terms. So for Unit 1, you can see it's going to be done over Term 1 and part of Term 2, whereas Unit 2 will start halfway through Term 2 and go through to the end of Term 3. We then start in Term 4, Unit 3. So essentially that is where Year 12 used to start. So we're actually going to be starting that earlier. And then we'll have 2 terms of Unit 3, 2 terms of Unit 4, and that Term 4 of Year 12 will be dedicated entirely to our external exams. Important to know that after the external exams, we will be asking you to come back to school for your final week. So we won't be losing any of our traditions, so you will keep things like Girls Rock, you'll keep things like your graduation for grade 12, speech night, even muck-up day. Okay. The purple you can see is the Unit 1 and 2, and the blue is Unit 3 and 4. You can see there's more time spent on Unit 3 and 4. The reasoning behind that is those are the ATAR units, and so we are going to spend more time on the ones that contribute towards ATAR. For certificate courses, you can study those certificate courses at CQ University, but there are other registered training organisations that you can do that. Perhaps increasingly those are going online. For cert courses, there is no paid employment requirement, whereas the things that are coming up there are. Generally what you would do is drop one of your school subjects. So we're going to ask you to pick 6. If you're going to take on a cert course, then we would ask you to pick 5 school subjects and that cert course. It's important to understand how the funding works for cert courses as well, that each student will receive funding for one cert course. If you do more, then you will not get subsidised funding, and it will be a significant cost to families. You can also undertake those university courses. So a lot of our students do that through Central Queensland University, but we do have students that undertake those courses through other universities as well. So for example, University of Queensland has an enhanced studies program. What I will say is that in general, because Central Queensland University is local, they have a lot more offerings to our students than the other universities do. We've got Wes and Maddie at the back who will be available to have a chat to you about any of those university courses, VETIS courses in general, and the 2 certs that we're having here next year. For traineeships, so that's almost like a step up from a cert course because it has an employer component. So you get the same qual, you'll get a certificate level qualification, but it will actually involve paid employment, usually for 1 day a week, but it can be more. Students do 1 less school subject, same as you would for a cert course. So this is an example of one that is currently available. So I've sent this information out to the students a few times. So this one is for Certificate 3 in Sport and Rec. One of our current grade 12s has just completed this qual, and that's done through the local pool, in fact. So if anyone's interested, email me back about the information that I sent, and we can have a look at it. Interestingly, it's a Cert 3, so a Cert 3 will qualify for QCE points and for ATAR. Okay, so you actually get a lot of benefit out of doing it. The last option is in that area is the school-based apprenticeships. The difference being that eventually you'll go towards a trade qualification. Again, paid employment. The difference being that you're not going to finish that at school. When you exit, you're probably going to be exiting close to 2nd year apprentice level. Again, 1 less school subject. Charlene is here to talk to people if you're interested in looking about school-based traineeships and apprenticeships. She'll be able to have a chat to you about that. So now we're going to have a look at all of those options. What are you actually going to choose? What are the things you need to do? Well, the first thing is to look at actually the pathway. So you're really looking at, when you finish here at the end of year 12, you really want to be heading to one of those 3 things. And that's either directly to employment, to further training in VET courses, so vocational education training courses, into traineeships or into apprenticeships. And the other option is into further studies at university. So you really want to be heading to one of those. If you're heading to the non-university, so the employment or the VET, what you can be doing is choosing applied subjects or general subjects. You can be choosing certificate courses. You can be choosing traineeships. You can be choosing apprenticeships. The only thing you need to do is make sure that you're going to be eligible for your QCE. And again, I'll be assisting you with that when I find the subject selections. If you're heading down the university pathway, you need to do that for general, or for general with another general, or for general with an applied, or for general with a Cert 3 or higher. You also need to make sure that you're going to be QCE eligible. Be aware of those prerequisites for the university courses, which are in the Year 10 guide, and again, I can provide you some assistance with that. The girls have been using some software from QTAC called MyPath, which also lets the students know if they're qualifying for the prerequisite courses that they know they want to do. I've said there that you need to also consider carefully the impact of subject choices upon ATAR for highly competitive courses. So the courses I'm talking about there are the ones that are always really competitive, such as medicine. So typically, again, if you are applying for medicine, you're going to need a very high ATAR, and if you are choosing a VET course for your 5th option for ATAR, it's unlikely that you would get there. You can still do your VET option as long as you maintain another 5 general subjects. They contribute to the ATAR at the very high level, and you're okay. The only other thing is with the prerequisites for university courses, depending upon those courses, there might be other requirements. So performing arts is a great example. So if you wish to go into drama, you're likely going to have to do an audition. If you're wanting to get into visual art, you'll have to create a portfolio. Fashion, portfolio. If you wish to get into medicine, with some universities, you're going to need to do a UMAT test. So it's some additional testing because it is so competitive. Essentially though, as Ms. Gooch said, what you need to do is choose the things that you are good at and that you like. Essentially, if you do that, you're going to end up in a career that you enjoy. You spend most of your waking hours at work, girls, and you want to enjoy what you do. So, that's what we want to do. So now we're going to look at the selection process. So you've got your handbooks. They are now online as well. Email sent out this afternoon. So read it carefully. It's got a lot of information in there. The information I've been talking to you today is all in the guide as well. What you do need to do is choose an English subject and you need to choose a mathematics subject. Okay, that leaves 4 other options. Those options might be applied subjects, might be general subjects, might be vet subjects, might be traineeships, might be apprenticeships, might be university courses. Any of those are okay. However, you need to choose some reserve options as well. Sometimes the timetable is a very complex thing and sometimes it's impossible to get everyone exactly what they want. And if we have subjects that have very, very small enrolments, there's a possibility that it won't go ahead. So we need to have some reserve options just in case. The last thing is to submit that to me so I can start building the timetable. So I'd like, if possible, to get that in on Monday, the 19th of August. So that's a bit less than 2 weeks. At that point, if you do change your mind, that's also okay. Any point that you change your mind while I'm still constructing the timetable, I'll take that into consideration. Even once the timetable is constructed, you can still change as long as it's within the boundaries of the timetable structure. That'll be okay. So just a pointer to where, particularly for those watching at home, for where the curriculum guide and subject form are. It's on the website under curriculum, and if you just look at senior school, make sure you're going to the section on 2020. The 2019 guides are still there, but you want to be having a look at the 2020 guides. Our final thing is to have a look at our contacts for tonight. So I'm just going to ask our staff to come forward so that people can put names to faces and just introduce yourselves. So come on up, please.
Hello, I'm Jess Lamb. If you would like to talk about drama, I'm the person to see.
Good evening all, I'm Christy Day. I hope to be answering your chemistry questions for you.
Good evening, I'm Gabrielle. I'll be in charge of psychology and math methods. Thanks.
Good evening, my name's Stephanie Stedman. I teach business and legal studies and I have some course overviews there for you if you need any additional information.
Good evening, I'm Greta Doherty and I take physical education and I'm just sitting here on the right.
Evening, I'm Jaden Borg. If you have any questions about biology in 11 and 12, come and see me, please.
Hi, my name's Paul Morris. I'm teaching general mathematics, which is replacing the old mathematics A. I'll just be down in the back corner. Thank you.
Hello, Marie Canavan and hospitality practices down that way.
Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Caitlin Schultz and I teach senior ancient and modern history. I'm in the back right hand corner if you want to chat.
Hello everybody, I'm here to answer your questions on physics and maths essentials.
Hi, Koo Lacey, ask me about ag.
Hi, I'm Lee Bartlam. Come chat to me about anything to do with English. And ladies, first time ever, you get to pick which type of English you do, so don't automatically tick English. Come and ask me about essentials. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. And we've also got Wes and Maddie at the back from Central Queensland University and Charlene from MRail. Please, we've got a lot of staff here, so make sure you make use of the chance to talk to them. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.